Hey everybody, welcome to the inaugural first episode of The Mind Game. I'm here with Dr. Diane McIntosh, and we've been, throwing this idea around for quite a while as to, doing a video cast or a podcast on mental health. As you know, my story, I was a National Hockey League player where I struggled with obsessive compulsive disorder and had to, really felt like I had to hide what was going on with my mental health back when I was playing. And fast forward 20 years later, I came out with a story in the Players Tribune about my struggles and what had gone on then. And since then, I've always said that if I ever got healthy again and got better from obsessive compulsive disorder back then, that one day I would use my platform to help others. And I'm thankful I have Dr. Diane McIntosh with me, who is the author of This is Depression. And it's a fantastic book on depression. She's a psychiatrist, well-renowned, chief neuroscience officer for TELUS, and just an incredible person. And we met quite a while ago, and really excited to do this with you, Diane. And I'll let you take it from here and tell a little bit more about yourself.
Well, thank you, Corey. As Corey said, I'm a psychiatrist, which means that I went to medical school. And after that, I chose a residency in what I suppose many people believe is a completely useless vocation in psychiatry. I will change your mind as we move forward through these podcasts, I very much hope. I think this is a podcast where I'll be able to convince the convincible that mental illnesses are real, serious medical illnesses, and they require real, serious medical treatments. So I've been practicing psychiatry for more than 20 years, and we call that practicing because of the fact that we're always learning. I'm always learning, and I always want to do my job better. So I spend a lot of my time teaching and writing and generally causing a ruckus as I try to push forward better psychiatric treatments, reducing the stigma, which Corey has done such an incredible job in his realm trying to do, and also increasing the level of compassion in my profession. I will say that before I went to medical school, I did my pharmacy training. So I was a pharmacist, and most of my teaching and my practice as a psychiatrist is focused on prescribing medication and doing that safely and appropriately. However, I believe in the power of talk therapy and in a number of other kinds of treatments where there is scientific evidence to support their efficacy. One treatment is exercise, and Corey knows about that well. We know exercise has an impact, a very positive impact on mental illness, targeting some of the brain areas where antidepressants work as well. So as we talk through mental illness and hopefully teach you a whole lot more about that, I want you to know that every human being is an individual with individual needs, whether that is medication, talk therapy, exercise, or all of the above.
Well, and ultimately, please feel free to make comments and ask questions on here. We're here, but as a disclaimer too, it doesn't anything that we talk about here is seek medical advice if you need it, seek therapy, if you really need it, and use this as a tool that possibly can help you to, if you're struggling, call your own therapist, call your doctor, and hopefully we can answer some questions here for you moving along. Some of the things we're going to cover and topics, we're going to cover sport and stigma, really what I went through as we go along here, and not so much all today, but as we have more guests and speakers, but we're going to talk about relationships, men and women, mental health with that, substance abuse, all sorts of topics that will come along, and suicide will be one as well that is a tough topic for everybody, but we're going to try and cover everything. But today we're going to cover a little bit of what's going on around us today, which is the coronavirus, and I know a lot of people are struggling at home mentally, and are just kind of, and I'll say this, Diane, for my own self, is that I get to the point where I feel like I'm a little bit trapped, and I get trapped in uncertainty, and I feel like if I can't get outside and I can't move, that brings on my anxiety, which can bring on depression. And we'll tackle a little bit of that today and ask you some questions on that, Diane, of how to really, get out of that mindset, because it's not always going to be like this. We know it's not going to always be like this. But for now, the stress is real. The struggle is real. The anxiety is real. I know a lot of people that are struggling, especially, and we can even start with obsessive compulsive disorder, because I myself am privy to that. And I think people are getting a little bit of a taste of what it's like to have obsessive compulsive disorder with the coronavirus, the hand washing, the having to be careful. And Diane, you've recently had a couple of patients in the last little bit that have come to you with OCD and coronavirus.
Well, I think, Corey, you know well that there are many different ways that people experience OCD. And one of them is a fear of contamination, of germs. And I think when I first met you, one of the things you said that was so important was about how unselfish people are who have OCD, that they worry about harm, but it's usually someone around them, someone they love, someone they care about, that they worry about harm coming to. And also, about yourself and keeping yourself safe. And when people have OCD related to contamination, it's not just that they're worried about themselves, they're often really worried about those around them. And so you have a situation where people have an excessive or irrational fear of contamination, and then you throw a rational fear on top of that, and a big hidden irrational or a rational fear. We know that coronavirus is highly infectious. It feels like an invisible enemy, and that just fuels people who are already really worried about this. We know 20% of the population has a mental illness, has lived with a mental illness. But a recent Nanos poll showed us that more than 50% of Canadians right now are feeling very stressed out, and maybe even having symptoms of anxiety or depression. Maybe they're abusing substances. We know alcohol use is significantly up. So we're all pretty stressed out. And if you already have a mental illness, especially one that's around contamination, that can feel a whole lot worse.
Yeah, and that's, so my OCD is I don't per se have the contamination one. There's so many different facets to OCD. So that, for whatever reason, I don't know, that just doesn't bother me. But I do still struggle with the fact that, if I don't wash my hands or giving some, like, it doesn't have to be OCD, but I worry about, we call it future tripping. It's if I don't wash my hands, I'm going to get somebody else sick, and then they're going to, that the spiral goes downhill of how terrible, and they get everybody else sick, and then somebody I know, right? So it's the downward spiral that really gets somebody with OCD. So, not letting myself get to that place. It's not so much about me getting sick. I'm worried about getting other people sick. So, and that's where OCD, I think people struggle with, is that uncertainty of, and that cycle that we can't get out of. What is something, even with someone without OCD, that they can do to not get into that future kind of spiral of the chain of events that are really unlikely to happen. But our minds can create things that make us think those things can happen.
Well, you said a lot there, Corey, and I'm looking forward to, as we move forward, talking more about the science of mental illness, because I think that is one of the key ways we're going to make our way through this stigma, and people will start to see that mental illnesses are medical illnesses, with a whole lot of science now that we understand that can explain them. But I think where we should go right now is, how do I cope right now with these stressors? I'm at home. Maybe I'm working from home. Maybe I've lost my job. I got a couple of kids running around I got to take care of. They don't have childcare. My partner is trying to work. All of those things, there's a lot of stress on all of us, and we don't know when we're going to get back to normal. So the first thing I would suggest to everyone is focusing on, what can I control? And just to take a moment to remind every human being on the face of the earth, there is one person that you can control, and that is you. You can't control your husband or your wife. You can't control your kids. You know that. If you had them, they pop out of the womb, they scream, they poo, they do whatever they want instantly. You can't control your boss or your mother-in-law. The only human being on earth you can control is you. There are things that you can control right now that do make a difference and do keep you safe. Washing your hands. We know, the science tells us, washing your hands keeps you safe. And physical distancing, not social distancing, because Corey, I haven't seen you in a while. I feel like I'm sitting in the living room with you. We can see each other, so we are not socially distant. We are physically distant. And keeping that 6 feet or 2 meters apart, we know that that is why we've been able to flatten the curve. So those are things that you can control. And honestly, it's another thing I'm excited to explore with everyone and with you as we work through this. You can change everything about how you think, feel, and behave. That's the essence of cognitive behavioral therapy. And that's because you can control you. I can't control you, Corey, but you can control you.
That's a great answer.
And I wouldn't want to either.
And I have so many questions, right now. There's so many different ways we can go with this, because people are struggling. I mean, there's financial stresses, there's the health stresses, mental health stresses. I really hope that after this, we see the importance when this is all over, that, as a society, we see the importance of mental health, and that, we need to make change, and that we need to, go in a better direction than what we're going in, because I think more and more people are starting to say, you know what, I'm struggling with my mental health. And this is something that I need help with. Now, are you seeing a lot of that with what you do?
In reality, Corey, we already were in a mental health crisis. Yeah. In this country, in the US, there is a mental health crisis. And what we know from past situations like this, and we haven't seen this ever as bad as it is, but even looking at SARS and the people that were on the front lines or that were in these zones where they were, deeply concerned about their well-being, we had a significant increase in mental health struggles following that time, and the frontline healthcare workers were particularly vulnerable. So we were already in a crisis. We're going to be in a worse crisis, and it's not just simply related to the fear around, am I going to get coronavirus? Is Granny safe? Then we have the economic stress on top of that, and we know that that is even a greater stress in the long term, probably going to be a greater stress than the corona crisis itself. So we're not in a great place already, and I'm deeply concerned about how we're going to manage the next phase of this, which is the mental health pandemic to come.
Yeah, and it's and hopefully this will change things. And the one thing that I do want to ask you about I'll talk about me first. So I'm trying to fill my time too, because I'm someone that's susceptible to anxiety, depression, and I'm trying to kind of manage that in a positive direction. And the one thing I do want to ask you about, because I think this is important, and this is a little bit early in our conversation, but I think that coming out of this, I'm concerned about people with that are filling their days with alcohol. It's a conversation that I wanted to have here with you today right away, because I want to address it that, anytime there's anxiety and stress involved, alcohol can take you out of that for that little small window. And especially right now, it's easy to just sit at home. 4:00 rolls around. It's like, what am I going to do? Okay, well, I guess I'll have a drink. Right. And then the next thing you know, it's 10:00 and bottle and a half of wine is down. And I'm guilty of that too. And about 2 weeks ago, I decided to make the change that I would try and move forward more to a healthy lifestyle. But, right now, alcohol really isn't our friend. And it's glorified, and, it's open as an essential service. And, that's a tough situation. What are some things, with alcohol we can give people advice to, and, some more positive directions to take it in?
There's actually two pieces to this, and let's start with routine and then go to alcohol, because I think both are important. Mm-hmm. So I said the first thing I think everyone needs to think about to be able to weather this storm, or to make it through what is going to be not a marathon, but an ultra marathon, is first of all recognizing what are the things I can control. I can control me. I can't control anyone else. The second thing is to impose a routine in your life. And this is especially important if you're working from home, but even as important, I would say, for everyone else who doesn't work from home, because at least if you're working from home, you've got some expectations. Essential to wake up at the same time, go to bed at the same time, get a good sleep, eat regular meals, schedule fitness. And let's talk about fitness next after we get through the next part of this. But having those regular routines, there's evidence, scientific evidence to show us that we prosper. If your regular routine is to, at 4 o'clock, have a quarantini, then, and I know it's not, then you probably should not be doing that. And it gets earlier and earlier. We all have those drinking jokes, with when I'm on the phone, seemingly 24/7, and talk, oh man, it must be 5 o'clock somewhere. And what else do you have to do? But we know that people are drinking more, and this can become a problem because it's being driven by stress. It's being driven by I'm bored, and other reasons that people have. And so there was just a Nanos poll that was put out that I think around 20%, 25%, I know, of people in the sort of 35 to 55 group drinking more than usual. And even in the younger age groups, around 20% have an increased alcohol use. So this can, talking about going down a rabbit hole, this can take you to a bad place pretty quickly, particularly if you're vulnerable. You already have a mental health struggle in your life, you have a mental illness, you have substance abuse history. Anytime that you're medicating to make thoughts and feelings go away with alcohol, cannabis, whatever it is that you reach to, that's a problem.
Yeah,
we can talk more about cannabis later, but it's and it's another show and a half or three that we can talk about with cannabis. But alcohol right now, it is an essential service because there's a lot of people who have alcohol issues, right? They're abusing alcohol. They have dependency. You close the liquor stores, we're going to have a problem. So we have to leave them open. But all of us need to reflect like you did, Corey, which is saying, is this really where I want to go? Is it good for me to be doing this every day? And having a personal conversation with yourself or your partner to say, do you think I'm drinking more than I should? Maybe we should stop.
Yeah, and this isn't a PSA, to tell people not to, it's but moderation, and watching yourself and taking care of yourself. I know that I had a friend once use the term hangxiety, because the next day I'm worse the next day, and then you can get into that cycle. But you talked a little bit too about the importance of routine, and that is so important. I had a friend once who's told me a story that her dad worked at home, and he worked from home, and every day he got up, showered, put his suit on, and went downstairs into his little office in the basement, and that's where he worked. And I was like, well, you're at home. Why don't you just wear pajamas? But it's the whole mindset of showering, putting a suit on. I'm not telling people they need to put their suit on and walk around the house, but
I suggest pants. Pants are important.
Right, exactly. So, you spoke to the importance of routine and how important that does. And what does that do for the psyche of someone's mind every day when you're stuck at home like this?
It ensures that you do all the healthy stuff that you should as well. It separates work from, if you're working from home, gives you that work-life balance, right? And our lives feel out of balance right now. So bringing yourself back to this work-life balance, that's my work time. This is my family time. This is my relaxation time, which can be very helpful. It also ensures we eat at the right times. We actually go to the bathroom. That we sleep and get enough sleep. There is almost nothing that makes a greater difference in our health and well-being than having a normal sleep at night. So if you're addicted to Netflix and everything seems, nighttime person in your head is going, oh, it's fine. But when you're waking up the next morning, you're going, what did I do? Why did I stay up so late? Your brain already knows that you benefit from these patterns. They make sure that you include that healthy side of your life in the balance every day.
Yeah, and that's very very well said. And it just, like, for me, we're gonna get through this, and when we do, I want to be ready. Like, I want to be ready. I don't want to have to. I've put on 15 pounds, or I feel terrible about myself, and now I got to get myself going again. So what this is going to end, and we are. I'm no medical scientist, trust me, obviously, but I know this is going to end. And when it does, I got to be ready to come right out of the gate, and I got to be ready to go, get back to work, get back into things, get back into life. And if, you let those things slide, it's going to be that much harder when we do get going, because, now all of a sudden, and I'm guilty of this. I think I put on 5 or 7 pounds in the first 3-4 weeks of this, because I did exactly the wrong things, like what we talked about. I sat there, I had drinks. I was like, what am I? Played PlayStation. I did all the things that, all right, well, and then as it got on, I'm starting to feel worse about myself. I'm looking at myself in the mirror. I'm starting to have, really negative thoughts, and just getting back into that routine. And part of that routine is exercise and nutrition, and how important that is in the psyche for mental health.
So you've heard a million times, I'm sure, this isn't a sprint, it's a marathon. I hate running. I like walking fast, and you've been around me enough to know that I move quickly. But the idea of running, and so when I say this isn't just a marathon, it's an ultra marathon. But I've been an athlete all my life, and the coming out of a great game or a great race, going through that line, even though you're exhausted and it's been awful, you want to come through the finish line of this experience with your arms over your head going, all right, I'm ready to go. When's the next, challenge in my life? You're not going to be able to do that if you've spent the last 6 months drinking and sitting on the couch, PlayStation. And that's why these routines are important. Personal reflection is important. But I would love to get into this whole exercise thing, because it is not only is it good for you and for your physical health, it also grows brain cells. It is a treatment for depression and anxiety. And the great news about it is that, you don't require sexy exercise gear, and you do not need to do a 4-minute mile here. What you need to do is get your heart rate up 5 times a week for about 30 minutes. So it's not a smell the flowers walk that you need to do, but you need to do a brisk walk. And if you can do that for 30 minutes a day, you are actually protecting yourself from depression and anxiety. It's a potent treatment. And you can actually over-exercise, like those crazy ultra marathoners that I just can't understand. Not crazy, but you know what I mean? Like, I just can't get my head around 200 miles. Why? But what I can tell you is that sometimes you can do too much. So this is a good news story. 30 minutes a day, 5 times a week, getting your heart rate up a little bit, grows brain cells, protects your mental health and your physical health.
Yeah, and that's something I've been doing maybe twice a week. And I know I need to do more. I preach it and I speak it, but I need to do more. I know I do. So again, none of us are perfect. So if you're out there listening, and you don't get it done, well, none of us are perfect. Try not to beat yourself up. Get out there. Maybe the next day you'll get going, right?
Start with 5 or 10.
Yeah, exactly.
Anything is good around the block, down the road. You got to start somewhere. And Corey, I'm going to keep you honest here. Every time we're on, I'm like, okay, did you do your walk today? I'm annoying in that way, but it's not a lot. And it is a walk, just a brisk one.
Yeah. And now, what do you suggest for families that are sitting at home? They have children. I guess the first question I'll ask during the day is what would you say to watch out for their kids? Everybody's concerned about how our children are dealing with this, but a lot of people don't know what to look for. And I think if you can recognize it as a parent, something that's happening, you can intervene and then kind of go from there and see. But so what are some of the things in a family you can look for a child or a family member struggling through this?
It's a great question. And I want to remind everyone, it's not just COVID that's infectious. Anxiety is infectious, particularly for your kids. They can catch anxiety from you. If you're a really anxious, frightened person, you're going to spread that to your kids, especially when they're younger children. I think that we need to have conversations with our kids about what's going on. I years ago stopped saying to my kids, "How was your day?" Because the answer I always got was fine. So I changed my whole conversation with them to tell me what you did today. What was the most fun thing that happened today? Now, aside from that, they're at home right now and probably driving you bananas. again, structure is so important, making sure that they are not spending their day in front of screens. And there's lots of science around screen time and little brains and how we change their developmental trajectory. But right now, making sure that you have a plan every day and that you keep some kind of structure and also get lots of runaround time, have those naps. For older kids, though, this is an opportunity. We need to have some conversations about where we're getting our information. And young kids or young adults are particularly vulnerable, right? Because they're the ones who are on Twitter. They're the ones, and that's a small percentage of people that are actually on Twitter, putting out some of this conspiracy theory stuff. But young people are on there, and they're on other sites and watching podcasts, God forbid, watching podcasts where there may be some fake information or anti-science stuff. 5G is spreading coronavirus. This is ridiculous. So it's a great opportunity to talk to your older kids about critical thinking, where to look for information. And no one knows everything right now. Even the scientists, the doctors don't know everything, which of course makes it more likely that we're going to have conspiracy theories right now. Because if there's a void where people don't know, if there's a dark hole there, it's going to be filled by people who want to have an explanation. For some people, this calms them, but it causes so much trouble, right, for other people, because these ridiculous conspiracy theories, eat more garlic, all that. This is ridiculous. So a great opportunity with your older kids, your teens and young 20s, to talk to them about critical thinking. If it doesn't make sense, let's check it out together. You might not know the answer. What are the best websites to go on? And those are the provincial websites, the federal websites where you get information from Health Canada. And so looking together, looking at reputable news sources. Why is that a good news source and this isn't? Joe Rogan is, excellent to listen to, but he's talking about probiotics as a treatment. This is nonsensical. It has no value in the coronavirus. So we have to know, okay, listen to that for fun, but where do you get your science?
Yeah, where do you get the proper information from? And that's another thing too, is you hit it right on the head, limiting your news. And I was guilty the first week of watching everything, different stations, seeing who was saying what was going on. And it became a kind of a bit of a rut, because I'm sitting on my couch and I'm watching these, what's going on. And none of it was positive. And it was making me feel worse. And it's good to educate yourself. It's good to inform yourself. That's always important. But there becomes a point where, there's other things that, I tried to put some positive structure into my day. So I'll give you an example of what it became one, I picked up a guitar, and I am terrible. I'm absolutely terrible, but I don't care. I'm not there to be good. I'm not there to get on stage, but I got up and I even practiced singing, and I don't care who hears me. But right, it's like
neither of those things.
Yeah, it's become a positive, and I'm actually not getting that bad. So that's one of them. I started really trying. I started working on a keto diet. So just to try to lose a little bit of weight. So like I said, when this comes out of it, I want to be able to look back at this time and say I did positive things, and I did happy things. So as far as and I've had some comments and questions from a lot of people, and this is going to end. We know it's going to end, and there will be better days ahead. But when are you ever in your life going to get 6 weeks or whatever the time length is, where you don't have to go to work and you can spend that with your kids and your spouse and all that? And some people are probably out there looking at me going, right? It's like, but yes, if I can look back and I could have 6 weeks with my children, again, my children are like 21, 20, and 15, when they were like 12, 13, like that would be a godsend. That would be a great thing. So, that's kind of the way I'm trying to view it is that what have I done with this? And when this is over, what have I done that's positive that I can be proud of through this? Because once you get working again, you're not going to get that time again. So, the importance of carrying something positive into your day and doing something for you that's going to advance you as a person, to me, is probably the greatest gift we can get out of this.
I would agree, Corey. And there's a lot to break down in what you just said. If you have anxiety, find one news source and be only on that. Only that one, because otherwise, all of these different going from CNN to CBC to this to that, the other, that builds anxiety. So pick one, and no matter how much it feels like I've got to check others, you pick that one and you stick with it. Whether it's watching it on TV or going on a website, pick one, and that's it. The other thing that you mentioned, I've treated PTSD for my entire career, and a whole lot at the beginning of the career. So more than 20 years, I can tell you, out of terrible things, good things come. Even the most terrible things, good things do come, and you often get what you look for. And so it's very hard, I think, for a lot of people to feel any kind of positivity right now, because there's financial strain, and there's concern, and you're trying to deal with little kids a lot 24/7 when maybe you're not used to having them all the time. But trying to find the good things that will come out of this. My daughter is my spirit person here, and that she's learned to macrame. So I got macrame all over my house. She's baking. She made a this thing's called the tapestry. She's doing tapestry. We're not having retro to the 70s, the 1970s. This is like the 1770s. We got a tapestry going on upstairs. So she's in grade 12. She's not able to go to school. She can't see her friends. She's missing her graduation. So she's learning all these new skills, which I think she's going to come out of this and go, why do I have string all over my room? But these are skills, and she's filling the time in a positive way.
Yeah. What about somebody that lives alone? That's a whole different animal. We have a lot of people, such as myself. I'm in my apartment a lot of times alone. We have some, older people that are living alone. Their children are gone. What do you suggest for them right now during this?
Well, all of those same things, Corey, and I think you could speak better to this than I can, but we, in the history of the world, we've never been more connected, and we've also never been more lonely.
Yeah.
There really is a difference between
social
distancing and physical distancing. And so there has never been a greater time to make that differentiation. Yeah, I'm physically not being close to people right now, but you've got to try to reach out to people. And particularly, there is no gift, I think, that's greater than when we give to other people. Nothing feels better than giving. And when you reach out to someone who may also be lonely, who that their kids might not be reaching out to them if they're an older person, or they're isolated generally, that is an incredible gift that you give to someone. Even that 5, 10, 15 minutes makes a difference. But also having the schedule, being careful about how much you drink, or whether you're self-medicating with alcohol or cannabis, getting good sleeps. All of those things that we talked about are important.
Yeah. Well, what do you say? So sometimes I can get into a rut where I'm sitting at home and I'm not, I'm just having a tough go, but I don't want to reach out to anybody because A, I'm not feeling up to it myself, but B, I can get to the point where I feel like I'm a burden on somebody else. And I don't want to be that. I don't want to be that burden on somebody else that, that I'm not doing well. And what would you say to somebody that's in the mindset that, that's that, because we can spiral into that. Like I spiral into that. And sometimes it's the depression talking. Sometimes it's my anxiety talking. Now, what do you say for that?
Well, we all have people in our lives that we know love us. And I hear a lot people saying, I'm a burden. I know I'm a stress. And, when people are very ill, that they really, I think that's one of the greatest pressures they feel, is the pressure that they put on their family. But what I know from every human being that I've ever met who has been touched by suicide is the last thing on earth that their loved ones want is that.
Yeah.
And, I have heard, it makes me crazy when people say suicide is so selfish. That is not what suicide is. In fact, people who really are seriously thinking about ending their lives, one of the major things that they're thinking about is, I got to get out of this. The pain is too much, and I am so a burden to the people that I love, and everyone will be better off. That's a lie your brain tells yourself. It's
Oh yeah.
absolutely not true. I've got people in my practice they were 2 or 3 or 4 when their parent ended their lives, and they still feel responsible.
Yeah.
They were 2, 3. They had nothing to do with it, but they feel responsible and they feel that loss. So no one ever recovers from suicide, sadly.
Yeah.
It is not a selfish act. It is an act of pain and desperation. And often it's because you're trying to relieve loved ones of pressure. And it's a lie that your brain tells you. It's not true. And if you reach out and to people who you know and love, to your support system, and tell them I'm not feeling well, I need some support, they would much prefer that than the alternative.
Yeah. And that's the other thing too, is when somebody does reach out, Diane, and I've experienced all of what you talked about, unfortunately, in my life, but I'm still going, still moving forward. But when somebody does reach out, it's there's so many different ways to go. It's if you think the person really needs help, it's important that mental health, in my eyes, takes a village. It's not just one person. Yes, there's confidentiality and all that, but then the next step is to tell somebody that can really help this person. That's if we're talking extreme cases, right? So if someone's really bad, the next step is to reach out to a doctor, or somebody that can help, somebody that can lead you in helping in the right direction. When someone comes to me and they're really struggling, I'm not qualified. I'm a guy with a story that has experience, but I can help lead people to the right place. I can help get them in the right, and that to me that's using the village. That's using the people around me I know, and telling that. So and the other side of it too is listening without judgment. We talk a lot about that, listening without judgment. If someone is either suicidal or even just not doing very well, I'm not qualified to sit there and try and fix their problems. But what I can do is I can lead them to help, and I can lead them to somebody that can show them that their brain isn't functioning properly, that this isn't something that, that is your brain is doing something to you that's not helping you go in a positive direction. So to me, those are probably the 2 most important things I've probably learned out of mental health is, listening without judgment, and then, encouraging help and using the village around us to help somebody.
And not taking on other people's stuff.
Yeah.
It's important, whether they're distressed or they're angry. And there's a lot of people out there that are working on front lines in whatever they do, and they've got someone angry with them, frustrated with them. First of all, trying to stay calm inside yourself, and there's all kinds of physical things that you can do to try to help yourself to remain relaxed, but also inside your brain, recognizing that's them, not me. I can't wear that. I can't take that on. I can't fix that right now. But as you said, the gift you have is to be able to listen without judgment, to understand, and then to say, I'm worried. I think you need some help. There are different kinds of suicidal thoughts. So it's not uncommon for people when they're depressed or anxious to think, man, it would just be easier if I could push a button, or I just didn't wake up tomorrow. These sort of passive thoughts when things are really difficult. And that is extremely common when people are depressed or anxious. That's very different than a thought of I am going to end my life, and I'm making a plan. I've made a decision. And those are places where we really need to act. If it's clear that people have decided, made a plan, organizing themselves, giving their things away. And that's when you talk to them seriously about, we need to get someone else involved here. I'm not capable as a friend to be able to help you through this, but I know this is serious and I want you to be okay. And even little things, like you said, helping to get them to sometimes when you're depressed, this, Corey, making a phone call. You can't organize your way out of a paper bag, let alone figure out how to do something to get help. Did I lose you a bit? I think I lost you, Corey. Sorry.
Yeah. Um, so we lost you a little bit, but you're back. You're good. Yeah, and not to. I guess part of the whole chain of events of all of that is then you start to feel guilty about having those thoughts. Like it's a big vicious cycle, right? I feel terrible and I feel guilty about having these thoughts and what kind of person, and then it's just a big spiral. But to not listen to that, how do you? If you're somebody in that place, or even in a bad place right now, you're dealing with anxiety, depression, a lot of people don't know how to reach out. They don't know how to express themselves. They don't know how to ask for help. They don't know. So what do you suggest is the first step in taking to asking someone and telling somebody you need help and struggling?
Well, I want to address what you said first, which is this guilt. Like, I'm a big loser for feeling like this. Why am I feeling like this? This is a brain problem. This is not, people, because they're depressed, their brain tells them that they're hopeless or useless or whatever, all the nasty things that your brain tells you when you're really depressed. That's your brain lying to you. And you're creating those thoughts. Your brain is creating those thoughts, and they're unfair and they're wrong. But that's because this is a brain illness, and that's the science that we have behind this. But if you're having those thoughts, how do you get help? And the first place, obviously, if you're at home and you're by yourself and you're having serious suicidal thoughts and you have a plan and you want help, there are suicide helplines that are available in every province across the country. At the back of my book, I have every resource possible in every province across the country, but you can get those by calling 811 and finding out what the resources are in your area too, going online. And, if you're in Vancouver or Toronto or Montreal, wherever you are, suicide helpline, boom, you've got it on your phone. Mm-hmm. The other thing, though, is that if you have a family doctor or a walk-in clinic nearby that you can go in, every family doctor understands depression and anxiety. Some may be stronger on that front than others, but really family practitioners do most of the psychiatry in our country, and they're very used to supporting people who have a mental illness. They can assess how severe the symptoms are, refer you potentially to talk therapy, talk to you about medication, talk to you about making the right diagnosis. So that is, as far as a face-to-face person to have contact with, is your family doctor or walk-in clinic. And now we have virtual care. So whether it's Akira or Babylon across Canada, and they are equipped to help to give you guidance as to what to do. And that can be just on your phone. And in several provinces, Babylon is free. A lot of people have Akira through their employers, and these two websites or apps that you can access can get a healthcare provider very rapidly who can guide you about how to manage your mental health.
Yeah, very well said. And that's always the first step is your GP, right? I mean, but it doesn't really matter at any point of who you reach out to, as long as it's somebody you trust, right? I know a lot of people, they're afraid of being judged, and that's something out there that we all deal with. That to lose that kind of, I started a youth program. It ended up changing a little bit the name, but initially, after I came up with my story, it was called Lose the Mask, right? And that was, that covered a whole wide variety of things, and I was so afraid of being, judged by people and judged by coaches and judged by, general managers, that this was where I was younger is that I always felt like a team and a coach would say, well, I can't win with a goalie that has a mental health issue. So that was in my own brain that I thought people would judge me, right? And then I look at guys like Michael Phelps, who's the Olympic swimmer, 23 gold medals, suffers from depression, right? Like, I would take a guy like that on my team any day, maybe not as a goalie, but as a swimmer. So, I think
slightly different skill set there, Corey.
Being judged is something that we need to lose. And that, if someone out there is, not judging you or not, or is judging you, or that, those aren't your people.
No.
Quite frankly, those aren't your people. Those are my people. I have people that still today, look at me as crazy one or whatever. And those aren't my people, because I've got a thousand other friends that are so loving and supportive that I'll go to them first. And I think it's so important that, we teach people that, not to judge others in situations like this, and that help is available.
And if you go to your family doctor, nurse practitioner, whomever that you reach out to, and you don't get answers that are helpful, or, come on, you just need a kick in the butt, get going, you're fine. And you're not fine. And, your friends and family know you're not fine. They're not your people. Exactly. I like you saying it exactly like that. If you're not getting the help that you need to find another person to go to. Don't give up. As you know, there are good and bad hockey players. There are good and bad swimmers, and there are good and bad doctors and other healthcare professionals. So if it's not the right one for you, and it might be that they're great in some places, they can do a, pap smear, lickety split, but they're no good on a mental health front, you need to find someone else.
You just had to bring that into our chat, didn't you?
I have no idea where that came from, honest to God. I could have said rectal exam, and maybe more people listening would understand. But, they're great as Dr. Jellyfinger, but man, don't talk about mental health. They're no good with that. So.
Oh, that's why I love you. What are some other things during this coronavirus COVID thing here? We've got about 10 minutes left, that we need to be careful of or watch out for, something else that can help us during this time.
Well, I think when we've talked about a lot of the highlights there, making sure you have a regular schedule, what can you control, being careful about what you drink. And I'm not telling anyone what to do at all. These are more just sort of motherhood and apple pie kind of notions. I think everyone knows starting to drink at 3 or 4 in the afternoon and throwing back a bottle every evening when this is not your normal pattern, or even if it is your normal pattern, might not be the healthiest way to approach life. Making sure that you pick one place to get your information if you're anxious. Being aware if you're already struggling with a mental illness, it may be more challenging right now. Reaching out to your healthcare provider and letting them know. We also know that sometimes, say you're taking medication right now, but you're finding that you're not quite as well, that the stress is really mounting. Sometimes that's the time to engage with a talk therapist on top of it. Or if you're already seeing a talk therapist and you're finding, I'm losing ground and this is getting more severe, it may be time to reach out and talk to your physician about medication. Yeah. And hopefully we'll have a chance to talk about different treatments as we move forward. If people want to hear about us in this podcast, when should we look to different kinds of treatment? But things you can do right now, trying to get the best sleep you can, making sure to try to keep alcohol at a minimum, having that routine in place, and getting some physical activity every day.
Yeah, and that brings us to another point, that you and I will probably have a whole show on eventually, is what we can just touch on briefly is medication. There's a massive stigma on medication right now. And some people I know don't see it, and they've grown in a world where it's okay, and their parents and their family made it okay. But, medication probably is the reason that I'm still here. What it did for me was it took the edge off so I was able to get therapy that could help me, to get better. So there's a lot of people out there that are probably really struggling right now, that I know are struggling, that I know can use medication. And it's not about pushing medication on people. And you can talk to this, I'll let you know that there's still a long way to go with our medications. But if you need it, we'll take medication for our hearts, whatever other issue we have. But all of a sudden for our brain, it's like, it's not okay. That makes zero sense to me. Why would you tell somebody that has a heart issue or diabetes, hey, you know what? That's not cool. I don't think you should take that medication. There's a lot of, you would never do that. And our brains have, like, they're complex, like they're physical pieces of our body. They will break down and they will need some help too. So, that's something that I had to get over too, was the stigma of medication.
Well, yeah, I mean, that you're right. That's 3 podcasts in one right there. Yeah. But what the critical piece here is, not everyone needs medication.
No.
But if you have a severe depression, a severe anxiety disorder, you just can't yoga your way out of it. You can't yogurt your way out of it. You need medication often in order, as you said, for some people to keep them alive. The big challenge we've had is with making sure, as I said earlier on, every individual is a unique individual. They've got a unique brain and they have unique needs. Antidepressants, we know beyond a shadow of a doubt work. We've got oodles of evidence showing they're effective, but they're not effective for everyone. And every antidepressant doesn't work for everyone. So my job as a psychiatrist is to make sure that the patient who needs an antidepressant is on the right one for them, one that they're willing to take because they don't have significant side effects, that it's effective. Sometimes people need a combination of medication. With hypertension, the most common thing is for people to now be on 2 or 3 medications. For diabetes, even 3 or 4 medications. And one of them could be insulin, for heaven's sakes. What's more dangerous? There is very little more dangerous in the wrong hands than insulin. And yet for mental health, somehow there's this stigma for mental illness related to medication that is so unfair and so inappropriate. And a lot of that comes from poor prescribing. And the reality is we don't have perfect medications, but we have newer ones that don't cause the sexual dysfunction that some of them did, or the weight gain, or, sweating, and on and on. There's lots of side effects that's my job to work with people to overcome. But if you need them, you need them. And there should be no shame in that, because what I want people to be able to do is get back to life. Get back to work, get back to love, function normally, get your brain back. And if this is a brain illness, and one more thing I want to mention, Corey, because you brought up this whole thing around hypertension or heart disease. If you have a mental illness, this heightens your risk for almost every serious illness, for obesity, for diabetes, for heart disease, for inflammatory illnesses, because chronic depression and anxiety are inflammatory illnesses. And the reverse is also true. If you have heart disease, obesity, diabetes, inflammatory illnesses, that increases your risk of a mental illness. So when we talk about treating a mental illness well, why it's so important, it's not just simply because, we got to get the mental illness better. We got to protect your physical health, and a well-treated mental illness protects your physical health.
Yeah. Well, and that's that, I had a therapist once tell me, he's like, okay, well, what's your quality of life right now? Because I went through I don't want to go on medication and all that. And I was like, well, I have a lot of thoughts of not being here anymore. I really can't get out of bed. He's like, so side effect of medication, not wanting to get out of bed and not wanting to be here anymore. Like, what? Let's have an honest conversation here, right? And that doesn't mean that you'll need medication forever. I know lots of people that go off it as they need, and and then are able to manage symptoms and that. But you did say one thing that was very important. I wasn't going to exercise my way out of obsessive compulsive disorder. I wasn't going to exercise yoga my way out of it. Yes, I could reduce the anxiety a little bit, but I wouldn't say severe, but I had a mental health issue that needed treatment. Just like, someone with diabetes isn't going to exercise their way out of diabetes. Yes, staying healthy will help, but they need, medication and interaction. So, to me, that was some great advice. That was some of the great advice I got.
Yeah. And Corey, you made another great point, which is, I think you had quite a severe OCD, and your brain still has OCD. You have learned and been taught with a lot of support to manage that through cognitive behavioral therapy, right? You've learned those skills. And the reality is, in order to be able to do cognitive behavioral therapy, to concentrate, to organize your thoughts, to follow through, to learn new skills, your brain has to work. And so there's a lot of people who are too ill to be able to fully engage in these really valuable skills. We got a ton of evidence for the value of cognitive behavioral therapy. But if your brain is too ill, you can't learn. If you get to the end of a newspaper article and can't remember what was at the beginning, how in heaven's name are you going to be able to learn new ways of thinking? Right? So this is to your point that maybe medication can help to bridge that gap. You get a great CBT therapist and they help you. One other thing that we didn't talk about that anyone can do, and even you and I know your brain is as full as mine is and going a lot. And I remember when I first learned about mindfulness, I thought, oh yeah, no, this brain cannot slow down. But learning mindfulness skills, they're a gift. Being able to, I love the way that it's often talked about is letting those bad thoughts in the front door, right? We all have them, letting them in the front door and out the back door, but not serving them tea, which means that we accept that we have these thoughts. We understand that we have them. We let them sit in them, but then we don't let them sit around. Then we don't serve them tea. We let them flow through us. And you can learn how to do that. And talk about great things to do with your kids is helping them to learn about being more mindful. And you can do that at any age. There's all kinds of great websites.
Yeah, I know, and that's fascinating, and that there's just so much to cover here. It's like we could just talk for hours. But the other thing is gratitude, right? It's gratitude is extremely important in the sense that it's a positive change in your brain. You can actually train your brain to think in a positive direction. I struggle with this. Like sometimes I do my gratitude journal, sometimes I don't. And then there's other days where I'm just in such a bad place. Like I don't want to be grateful for. Like I can't even write anything down. There was one time I was like, I was thankful for my pinky finger on my left hand because I could because I was like, I can't think of anything else, and this is just garbage. But then you know what? Eventually you snap out of it. What are your thoughts on having a gratitude journal and people that struggle, writing for things or thinking about things they can be grateful for?
Well, that's putting an action that's so valuable in a concrete form, because I think gratitude, forgiveness, gratitude in the sense that I'm the only person in the world I can control and absolutely accepting that, those are the 3 gifts I've given myself. So every day thinking about something that you're grateful for. And if you struggle to make yourself do that, writing it down can be really, really helpful. And you don't stop till you think of something. And there's always something to be grateful for. I don't know. I'm grateful I have this pen and my hand works, whatever it is. But it's a gift you give yourself. Forgiveness too. We can talk about that down the road, because forgiveness is a gift you give yourself, not anyone else, even the person you forgive. And gratitude, again, something you give yourself every day.
Yeah.
And I am grateful for you, Corey.
Oh, well, thank you. And I'm obviously grateful for you coming into my life in a strange and wonderful way. How we met was fantastic. Diane's book, you can get it. This is Depression. It's on Amazon, or you can go to her Twitter handle. What's your Twitter handle, Diane?
Corey, I have no idea.
Yeah, no, I'll get it. I will tweet it out.
On Amazon.
Well, you can just go to my site and I'm connected to her and all that. But we've got about a minute and a half here. We'll just wrap things up. And that's almost a full hour, and that just flew by. My goodness, and so much to talk about. But just kind of, if you could just summarize from your point of view, again, just go over the things of the highlights of what we're going through today, what we need to do to get through these days, each day, every day, and just kind of summarize what we talked about.
Control yourself. That's the only one you can. The things we know that work: washing your hands, keeping a physical distance, maintain that routine, check in with yourself. Am I drinking maybe a little bit too much? Doing something physical every day, even if it's just 30 minutes, finding something to be grateful for. And we will get through this, Corey. You've said that again and again. We'll be on the other side of this before too long. And I want everyone who's listening to come through with their arms in the air going, woo, we made it. And now I'm ready for the next challenge in life.
Exactly. And you said it so well. We are going to get through this. We will.
Together.
And together we're going to do it. Reach out, text somebody today, anybody, just one person, call somebody today, whatever you have to do. It never has to be this long-winded conversation, but just check on somebody and make sure they're okay. But thank you so much, Diane. Greatly appreciated. Tomorrow, check in, because I have Sean Burke on with me. And we're going to talk a lot of male things. Sean Burke's the former National Hockey League goalie, NHL All-Star. And Diane will be here too to help break down that conversation and how it goes. So thank you so much for today, Diane.
Thanks,
And
everyone. Thanks, Corey.
we'll see you guys soon. Thanks for watching.
Bye.